my hometown of Marlborough, lots of businesses have unfortunately been flooded, but I live on a hill, so I'm okay. But we've all been helping each other out, and I hope that the water subside for the local businesses. But apart from that, it's been a lovely time and a lovely Christmas. And thank you for inviting me and sharing everybody's space here. It feels a real honor and it feels a real pleasure.
Oh, Maria, it's our pleasure, absolutely, to have you here. We're all of the women who are members. I explained a little bit. Everybody's really interested in, the mysteries of the earth, the things that we've taken for granted so much. I want to come and ask you first of all, though. Here in Ireland, we'd be fairly familiar with dowsing if we have a country property and we want to find the well or the right place to place things. But now you have such a deep, rich relationship with dowsing. Your father was a master dowser. How did you develop your craft or your skill, or is it a gift, Maria? What is it really about?
To be honest, I got brought up with dowsing, so it's second nature for me. But to be really honest, it's very, very easy. And I've taught hundreds of people over the past, 3 decades how to douse. But more importantly, what is dowsing?
Mm.
What is it? Some people will say it's the ability to find lost objects, wells, underground water. But really, for me, it's making a relationship with Gaia, Mother Earth, and finding out about how her extraordinary energies can heal us, make us vibrant,
Yeah.
give us energy. So it's a connection or a reconnection for some of us to coming back to the planet, to that beautiful Earth Mother that we live upon and relating to her because we all live with Earth energies. We really do. You might, in your own homes, have an area in your garden that you feel is really relaxing, for example, or an area that is more invigorating. 9 times out of 10, that's where different types of earth energies are going to be. So we can explore our local environs, our local parks. Nature gives us clues. So if we see, like when you go into those ancient churchyards or parks, you see those huge cedar trees and those yew trees. If they're vibrant, if they're growing, if they're hundreds of years old, they're going to be above a feminine earth energy pattern that's like a spiral, like a geospiral. So we can look to nature for clues to the different types of earth energies. And where you have rookeries, where the rooks all meet, and they're quite a noisy little community, rooks, aren't they? Then that's going to be underground water and places where we should avoid because they will give us geopathic stress. Yeah.
Okay, that's really, you know a lot about the sort of geopathic stress and what makes us well and what works against us and that kind of thing. How do you know this information? How do you intuit this information or see it? What is the way it manifests for you?
Well, to be honest, all of this information comes from the Victorian era when they really started. Normally, gentlemen, may I add, the
Yeah.
so-called learned gentlemen, maybe learned a bit too. But anyway, that's where it really stems from. It stems from, like decades and decades and decades, centuries of information handed down to us. And even if we look to the ancient Chinese scribes that worked for the then imperial emperors, they were documenting things like dragon lines and lays across the landscape and where to put the emperor's palace, where to put the emperor's tomb. And they developed a science called feng shui, depending on how one wants to pronounce it. So it's coming from a rich background. But that said, we can still kind of intuit what we feel is right for us. And we can understand that because geopathic stress, if you were living above it, for example, let's say you were living above an underground stream that is giving off an emission, it's not the water that is giving off the geopathic stress, it's as it's moving through the rock, It's that force field that's emitting. Do you see what I mean? So we all need water, but it's that kind of emissions that are detrimental to our health if we have long-term living conditions above it. So what we can do is we can either look to nature and find out if we've got moles around, or literally we can have symptoms of geopathic stress, and that could be teeth grinding at night, waking up feeling fatigued, waking up feeling, you know, quite fearful about things. I mean, we have to be practical. Is this an anxiety issue, or is this being caused by geopathic stress? A good kind of dose of common sense will allow us to see if we're being affected by geopathic stress or not. So it's really a case of exploring how you are. If you do feel you're under geopathic stress in the bedroom where you sleep, that's where most people would suffer geopathic stress. Move your bed by 15 centimeters one way. If you feel better, that's good. If it's not, move it 15 centimeters away from where it originally was, and play around with the idea of finding the best place to literally sleep. But here's a really good dowsing tip. I mean, you're on mute now, so I don't know if there's any dowsers amongst us, but I use a simple L rod like this. It's a sleeved rod. You can see here where I can place my hand. And if I put my rod into search position, that's pointing straight ahead and parallel to the ground, not too far up, not too far down, parallel to the ground. And I stand in the doorway of my bedroom, okay, facing into the bedroom, and I put my rod like this and just say to my rod, now I'm going to move it falsely, but it would move by itself, okay? And I just say to my dowsing rod, I always say, please. I always say to my rod, please show me the best position for my bed for better health. And it will move. I am moving it, and it'll
Yes.
move and point to a direction. Then follow your rod, literally like an action replay, going slow. I see so many starter doubters. It's like they want to race and they're wanting to hit a post. Be slow, be gracious, and then eventually your rod will do this. It will turn in and it will say found, and that would be the best position for your bed. And that is very, very easy to do and very empowering, because you will feel the rod move. I mean, I taught, you know, I've taught lots of people to dowse, but one of my funniest moments was with Tony Robertson, you know, of Time Team. He does Walking Through
Yes.
History. And I was on the show Walking Through History, and you're not allowed to interact with the star. The star just turns up, and then you start recording and do about 20 takes. But in those takes, I said to Tony Robertson, you know, just have a go at dowsing for this lake, just like what I've said to you guys just a moment ago. And he was using two rods. You, for directional dowsing, what I've shown you, can't you do it with two rods? Do you see what I mean? You can only do it with one rod, and one rod is actually better. But most people like to see you with two rods. And so I gave the rods to Tony and said, you know, just walk and find the lay. And it was perfect. As the rods crossed, when they hit the ley line, he just looked to camera and said, I didn't do anything. They moved, because they will react to energy under the ground. So it's a very simple thing to do. And I would suggest, you know, get a rod and have a go.
Well, there'll be at least 30 people, if not 31, tomorrow morning going out looking for dowsing rods. Maria, that's a fascinating thing. Just on the idea of geopathic stress, I know that you have something very simple that you say can actually, is it that it clears the geopathic stress, or it cleanses it, or that you could, is it something that we can have in our houses that protects us from it in some way? Did I hear you mention that before?
Absolutely. I mean, for example, if you are living with, you know, really bad geopathic stress, I live in chalk downland on the Marlborough Downs, okay? And that is very, very porous. It's like a sponge. So wherever you go across Avebury, Stonehenge, they're all on my doorstep, Marlborough. You're going to get underground water, geopathic stress. So one way that you can counteract geopathic stress is called negating it, because it's not going to take it away fully, but it's going to really radically reduce it. What you can do is you can get 2 bits of copper, preferably industrial copper. Industrial copper you can get at a builder's yard, for example, and then you can either manually plait it. So it's literally like roping hair. You get 2 bits of hair and you do that. Yeah,
Yes,
it's
yeah.
literally like that. That's what you would. I'm gonna have to unwind it now. That's what you would do. You literally wrap it round, roping it like I just shown, or you can put it in a vise and then lock the 2 bits. And you'd want to one about sort of get some copper that's about 1.5 meters, 2 meters long, and then you pull it taut like this, and then you get a drill. And a drill has a kind of spiral end, doesn't it? And you can wrap the copper around that spiral end like this, slowly turn the drill on, and it will rope it for you. And then you just make it into a circular shape and put that anywhere in the house. You could have it that way in the house, that way in the house, like upright or flat, and that will start to negate. How does it do that? Copper is a conductor, and it's used in gardening now to stop slugs eating certain plants like lettuces, etc. And you get copper tape to go around garden pots, literally to stop the slugs in, because it has a natural electrical field. And so that natural electrical field that's a conductor kind of pulls in the geopathic stress and negates it. And just every sort of 3 to 6 months, if it's looking slightly tarnished, and it will tarnish after a while, just give it a little bit of a wipe, and that's it. Or you could spend a fortune. I mean, you could go online, okay, and I'll show you another. This is very expensive. It was a gift it was a gift. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily buy it, but that would cost you about £800. A friend of mine makes them. But the good old fashioned copper rod,
Mhm.
for example, will start to negate. And what some people do with it, if you feel like you're coming down with a cold or you feel a little bit low, we all have those days, then just sit or sleep in your copper coil, because if you make it like from about 2 meters, you'll be able to fit yourself inside it. Then
Yes,
that's said to help as well to self-heal with the copper. It's a bit like, with rheumatism, people wear
copper
copper
bracelet.
bangles,
Mhm.
bracelets around them. It does the same thing.
Wonderful. And again, something that people can do for themselves, because that's what it's all about, really. It's really going back to the sort of old wisdom, isn't it? The working with the earth, working with nature. And you do a lot of that in your work at the Avebury experience. I was listening to a little bit about that. And you run the Avebury experience, but you also have some fascinating things to tell us about Stonehenge and what you discovered during the course of your own work, sort of in the landscape of Stonehenge. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Mm. I really feel, I mean, maybe you do in your homeland, that if you have a connection with a place, something magical happens. And it doesn't matter where that place is. It could be on top of a hill, in a forest, but by a tree. There is this beautiful connection. And I have that connection with standing stones because I've been around standing stones, following my father around from, knee height to a grasshopper, as the old saying goes. But I've always felt there was something missing. Because historians think they can tell us the whole of the truth. Archaeologists think they can tell us whole of the truth, but they miss things because they don't have that connection with the ancestors and the past. So one of my finds was that in the Stonehenge landscape in the Neolithic era, that's going back 5,000 years or so, uh, the people there had more longer skulls than what we have now. They were long skulled people that built particular ancient sites, like the first phase of Stonehenge and long barrows and dolmens. You have a lot of dolmens in Ireland, for
Mm,
example.
wonderful.
You have some wonderful, wonderful sites over there. So I discovered, as part of my work, the elongated skulled people, and just recently during lockdown and after, I looked to the reports that described the body size and their heads, because I'd only photographed one skull at Cambridge University that was really long skulled. And I found out that their ear placements through archaeological reports were not where our ears are. They were further back and they were smaller, making them almost looking mythical.
Mhm.
Maybe it's where the origins of the Fae came from in terms of ears and how we perceive pixies and fairies alike. So that was one aspect that I discovered about Stonehenge. And I've recently got a book out, The Secret History of Stonehenge, and it covers all different ancient sites in Egypt, because I take people to Egypt as well. But the main thing there was, I just connected to the landscape. And, I truly believe once we connect to the landscape, it opens up to us and it will tell us its stories.
Yes, sorry, I was coughing there and I turned myself off. It would now you on that subject, you go into a particular area and you ask the guardians of that area for permission to move forward. And you say that if you were to stand in a particular place and ask for that permission and you begin to move forward, you feel yourself being pulled forward. That is the permission. And if not, in a sense that you are actually trespassing on a sacred site in some way. Is this something that you do every time? There's a lovely picture you put up of the sort of very old ancient image of a keeper of the place. A little bit like there was a film out a number of years ago. I can't remember what it is now. I wish I'd known. I'll edit it in maybe later. And it showed this little pixie standing at a gateway to a very sort of magical land. And he had to decide whether or not you could come through. Is this part of your routine or your ritual of your work?
Absolutely. It's in all kind of ancient esoteric teachings. There's a way of interacting with place, even somebody's house. If I'm doing house healing, whether it's on Zoom, whether I'm physically there, I always say to my clients, tell the house I'm coming. And if I'm at an ancient site, I will say to the guardian, to the spirit of place, and to the ancestors, please accept me. Can I have permission to douse? Can I have permission to enter? And then I would stand with my feet slightly apart, feeling relaxed. And if I feel a kind of gentle pull towards the landscape, or maybe a sway each way, or a slight pull back, basically movement of my body, which could be very subtle, then that would give me kind of permission to work with the energies of place, the earth energies, the lays. And that way, you're granted permission. And it's a bit like anything. If somebody welcomes you into their home, you have a warm and friendly environment. If I force my way into your home and it feels like I'm an intruder, well, you're not going to greet me warmly. And ancient sites are like that as well. And once we have been granted permission to work, you have protection at that site as well, say all of the old esoteric texts. So really it's a win-win for everybody. And I say to my students, that I teach Dowsing with, well, if I went into your house and you didn't know me and I go running upstairs, going through all of your drawers, you think, what's that crazy woman doing? What right has she to do that? Well, maybe some ancient sites and their guardians and spirits of place and ancestors feel like that. So just literally, be kind to place. I can remember just after lockdown, I don't do water divining much now. I don't. I focus on earth energies, but that's where I came from. I came from that water divining tradition. And someone contacted me in lockdown and said they've got a healing center. It had a healing well, but it had an extension, not a particularly pretty extension, done in the 1960s or 70s. And they had all of the top water diviners to look for the stream. So clearly I was bottom of the list. But anyway, that doesn't matter. And I just simply said, have you asked the underground water if it wants to be found? And she
Mm.
said, nobody's asked that. I said, have you asked the spiritual place if you can find it? No, nobody has. I said, well, why don't you try to do that? Then I'll come down and then I'll probably be able to find the stream, if not the holy well itself. And of course, I arrived. They didn't tell me where the position was going to be a really small area. So I've got this massive like hazel rod, which was quite problematic. Uh, but nonetheless, I found the stream when other people didn't. And it wasn't because I'm the best water diviner. That's not the case at all. It's because I simply asked, did it want to be found? And it said yes.
That is fascinating. And it's actually a whole aspect we forget about. And I suppose really we do tend to think that somehow, our time here in this world is the sort of pinnacle of human, civilization. But there have been incredible civilizations long before us. And oftentimes, I think I've heard you and others, and certainly in your series, Ancient Civilizations on Gaia TV. And guys, if you haven't got Gaia TV, you really do have to subscribe a little bit and go and watch the Ancient Civilization series that Maria and some other fabulous presenters bring to us. But what many of you actually say is that there have been civilizations before us who were very advanced and had incredible gifts and things that we've probably lost even now. Um, can you tell us a little bit about that? I know some of what you talk about is to do with Atlantis and Lemuria and other great places. And I don't mean for you to go into the whole thing now, but just a little understanding of the kinds of civilizations that has come before us.
Mm. Well, Atlantis is the best known. It's was obviously recorded by Plato, and it came down to us from Plato. And he said the metropolis, meaning the city of Atlantis, was circular in shape, consisting of three concentric circles with water in between. So if you imagine like three islands, that was the metropolis, and it was supposed to have been really lush and really fertile, and it had fertile fields. Well, when we looked at particular Earth energies patterns, which I pointed out for ancient civilizations on Gaia, then you have one very powerful Earth energy pattern emitted by underground water, but very deep water, water that is not related to rainfall. That's called groundwater. So when water falls from the sky and fills up in the aquifers and it fills up in the underground streams, it's called groundwater. This water is much, 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 much deeper, and it's generated within the womb of Gaia. It's literally earth water or yin water. And of course, geologists would be screaming at me now, no, there's no such thing, Maria Wheatley, or you're talking rubbish. But I can guarantee you on rock planets, a rock planet can produce water. And that's why we will find water on rock planets like the moon of Europa, the moon even, and Mars. They will have underground water. So I was saying that, Atlantis is based, the city, on this amazing earth energy pattern that the ancients incorporated into their everyday life. Now, what can we learn from that? If we look to new builds, whether that's a school, whether that's, a hospital, and we start looking for positive and negative earth energies, then we can live in harmony with Gaia. And that's what I think the ancients were adept at, living in harmony with Gaia and
Mm.
looking to these particular energies and activating them in particular areas of their life, whether it's a school or whether it's, healing energies needed in a hospital environment.
Mm. And you know, never before have we, well, maybe in the past, but certainly not in recent history, have we needed to connect with that more than ever, to learn what our ancestors, you know, would have done in working in harmony with Gaia, Mother Nature, and that, and maybe there's an interest to return. I mean, you mentioned, you know, the druids and that, and I know in the group of women we have here, uh, many of them, you know, will take they commune in nature, they'll swim in the sea, they feel more alive out in nature, and climbing or you know, going through woods or whatever else it is, and it's not something our parents or grandparents thought too much about. They took it rather, you know, they took it for, you know, for what it was just there. We seem to have this new impulse to heal ourselves in nature, to ground ourselves in nature, and to connect with it on a much, almost a spiritual level. um, so you mentioned that when you go out and you are working in the field, and you look out across the landscape, that you can see that some ley lines have color. For example, I think in one place you said there's a long barrow and you can see the ley as blue, and that works with the throat chakra. So when you talked earlier about how if we know more about it we can heal ourselves, and that sort of thing, how are there specific places for healing certain parts of the body, or physical or emotional illnesses that we may have, such as the holy wells, for example, which were, you know, the sort of, what would we say, healing centers of the old.
Mm. You see, in esoteric water divining, even standard water divining, before you bore for like a holy well, or even if you want to interpret a natural spring, you use this kind of color dial. Imagine it's got red on it, yellow, and then various colors, you know, the colors of the rainbow, let's say, like that. And if, you know, you asked what sort of water you wanted to bore for a holy well, for example, and it came up red, well, that's going to have a lot of iron in it, like Chalice Well, like Glastonbury. And if it came up white, it's going to have a lot of calcium in it. And if it comes up, you know, green, it's going to have, you know, copper, probably malachite, you know, some kind of rock mineral like that, and so on and so forth. And the purest of healing colors in terms of holy wells and indeed earth energies is going to be white, violet, and indigo.
Mhm.
They are going to be really, really healing colors. And 9 times out of 10, holy wells will fall under that anyway. So they can be very healing because white is always all of the colors all in one, and that can be very healing. And if it's going to be indigo and violet, it's going to be healing but activating. It's going to be activating the third eye chakra and the kind of the crown area around the higher chakras. And so if you imagine that all lays or earth currents, holy water itself in holy wells has one of the 12 earth colors that have a dominance. So when I say, you know, a ley line could be blue or an earth current could be blue, that's its dominant color, but it has all of the colors in it, but one color prevails. It's a bit like white light contains all of the colors of the rainbow, doesn't it? And we can only see that through a prism, or when, you know, water falls and it falls as a rainbow. But white light will contain all of the colors. So again, we can work with particular colors at ancient sites depending on their color, which will relate to the chakra sequencing. But if it's white, it's going to be very universal healing.
Mm. Okay, and so this is the kind of thing that you teach at your School of Esoteric Studies, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you do these courses over Zoom or by Skype, and
Yeah, over Zoom now, really, because that's the best medium that most people relate to. And I do, you know, practical workshops at Avebury. I do once a year a professional dowsing course with all different types of earth energy and how we can interact with it. But you know, you only need a couple of lessons with dowsing. I mean, my first level 1 is only 7 lessons, and that will get you going on about 8 different types of energy that prevail
Hmm.
across the planet. So it's not just Avebury that's going to have an energy. It's not just Stonehenge.
Mhm.
These prevail everywhere that we can find and interact with ourselves
Hmm.
independently.
Yeah. And so you say that there's local and national and then international lines of energy, that there are some quite small and then some that are huge. Tell me a little bit about, for example, the Michael line, which stretches from Skellig Michael all the way down to, is it somewhere in Greece? At the different points, or sorry, and I'm throwing two in at you. The
Yes,
other is, I hear you talk about the Mary and Michael lines. Um,
yeah,
can you
the line you're talking about that starts off in Ireland and goes all the way to Armageddon. It goes through Greece, it goes through Italy, and they stop there. That's Hamish Mill and Paul Broadhurst and their partners. They stop to Armageddon. It's not like duh duh Armageddon.
Okay.
They just happen to stop there out of logistics rather than anything. And so you have a line. And what Hamish discovered where it starts in Ireland. So I'm going to put my dowsing rod up. Imagine that's the ley. He found 2 currents entwined in it, which he called Apollo and Athena. And they entwine the lay a bit like a caduceus pattern. So you've got one going that way and one going that way, and that's a lay system. And so that particular lay system went all across Delphi, for example. I've doused it in Delphi, and I've doused it in Italy at the Sacra San Michael, which is a church dedicated to obviously Michael in the Alps. It was fantastic. So they're ley systems, and they're the most powerful, where you have a ley line and a male and a female earth current entwining it.
Mhm.
That's powerful, and that's what's in your homeland, and that's what goes through, and it goes through all the way, as I said, to Armageddon. But when I was in Egypt, and I've been to Egypt, oh my gosh, several times now, it's a wonderful place to visit. I happened to be at Abydos Temple, and it has it. If you imagine that they've all got massive columns, you feel like a mouse there. You feel this big, looking up at a gigantic column, and at the end of this beautiful temple with all of these columns, you have 7 what they call chapels or chambers. It's just a kind of Christianized way of looking at them, calling them chapels. I'm sure that's not what pharaohs called them.
Yeah.
Uh, but you have 7 at the end. And I noticed there was a lay going right the way down the axis line, which happens in Christian churches, happens at ancient sites like Stonehenge, and that there was not just 2 currents, a male and a female. I noticed those first because one current hit the Osiris chamber, and another female current hit the targeted rather the Isis chamber. But then I found another one, almost like a growing one. And I realized this had a triple aspect to it, and the other line went for Horus. Well, that's the deities of ancient Egypt, Isis, Osiris, and their son, Horus. And
Mhm.
so I think, some of the more powerful places, which, Egypt is one of them, may have 3 currents associated to them. And I met a master dowser that had been doused in Bali, and a synchronicity always has it and puts people together to learn from one another. He said, "Oh, I've just been to all of the temples in Bali, and I found 3 currents associated with a lay." So I think we need to be open-minded and not just follow what's already been done and explore things ourselves.
Lovely. That's a beautiful way of describing it, because I think most of us know of somewhere where we feel, something particularly. Some of us will use the word spiritual or magical or just change. For example, when our children were very young, we used to take them off for picnics, and we'd actively hunt out places with you know, ancient stone circles, or you know, a dolmen or something like that. And I remember when one of our youngest was about 2.5, we went into one, and it was in a field. We had to cross a field and get permission from the farmer and do all sorts of things. And we stayed a little while there. And when we went to leave, she wouldn't leave. She sat right in the center of it and was so, we have photographs of her. She's just so calm, so serene, absolutely did not want to leave. And yet you can imagine a toddler just wants to get up and run in any direction. But this was this incredible sort of peace that seemed to descend on her. Would most of us feel that, you know, that sense of, you know, is it Mother Gaia speaking to us? Is it that there are particular energies there? Is it because others have found it sacred to them, and so we're picking up on that? What are we picking up on, I suppose, is what I'm saying to you.
I think, you know, mostly it is the earth energies, because in experiments that I've done with the team at places like Avebury and many other places besides, when I've doused a particular energy, I say, okay, what does that energy imply? What does it imply? And so we did a lot of tests on what's called Hertz frequencies. And your brain, when it goes into alpha mode, calm, serene, it's normally around 7 hertz of frequency, and that's exactly what some earth energies emit. So as we go into that energy space, whether you're aware of it, whether you douse it, whether you're just wandering into it, your brain is going to feel a bit calmer. Now, recently, Professor Tim DeVille, he's an archaeologist from Bournemouth University. And I really agree a lot with Tim DeVille's ideas about Stonehenge, because he said it's a healing monument where a god manifested. And I think I've proved that in my book. Now, what Tim went on to do, because he was listening to all of the old sayings about Stonehenge. And if you go back to the 12th century, Geoffrey of Monmouth, who wrote the History of the Kings of Britain, said, no stone at Stonehenge doth not have healing power. And so he was listening to all of this. And he's obviously at a university, so he's got a budget at his disposal. So he created a project called Human Henge. And that's where they tested all of people's brainwaves when they interacted with ancient sites. He's not looking at earth energy. He's just putting people into ancient sites. But most people, you know, will be walking on earth energy there at some point, I can assure you. And he noticed that their well-being became better. And he chose, as Human Henge Project, people that suffered from anxiety, depression, you know, those types of, some people would say ailments, other people would say mental health issues. It's however you want to see them, but they improved. When I met Tim DeVille, when we were both lecturing at one particular lecture place in Glastonbury, I said, I'm going to go one further than you, Tim, and say it's the actual earth energy patterns that are doing it. Of course, he did not agree with me. He didn't disagree with me. But my point here is it's been proved by universities that these places have natural healing capacities that have been recorded ever since the first chronicles were being written by the scribes of old.
Oh, this is such a good news. This is a real good news story, Maria. I mean, it's so empowering to people to know that our environment actually heals us. I know the is it in Japan, the whole Shinrin Yoku, the idea of going into the forests and bathing with them changes the brain frequency and allows students seemingly do wonderfully well in exams as a result of that, even though, you know, some others would have studied as much or had the same abilities, they didn't do quite as well in studies. So it's fascinating to hear that. And I'm really grateful for you for bringing all of this information. Your knowledge is amazing. I want to allow other people, I don't want to keep you to myself, but does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask Maria? Because this is a wonderful opportunity. There's something in the chat box, forgive me, I haven't got it. Oh, that was somebody who couldn't hear. Okay, that's fine. Guys, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to, or put your hand
Okay,
up.
it's Mary here. Mary.
Hello, how are you, Mary Hillary?
Hiya. I'm just wondering, because was looking for these L rods and I couldn't find them anywhere in Dublin. So what about an old metal coat hanger? Would that work if you just bent it into an L shape?
Absolutely. I mean, my late father would use anything. He always used to say, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, if it works, it works. And a good old fashioned, you know, coat hanger that you bend into an L shape will work, because it's really the idea behind it, Mary, is that it's your muscles that pick up on energy and it will make the rod move. That's one idea. I mean, it's a $6 million question. What causes the rods to move? So yes, even you could use a piece of, you know, a bolt on the end of a piece of string to make it into a pendulum. As long as you get a reaction from a dowsing rod, well, then you have a dowsing instrument.
And I was shown how to use the rods, and I was told to use two, and that if they were parallel, it was good, but if they crossed over, that was bad. Is that right?
I've never heard that, because the way I never agree or disagree with people, because I'm not here to say that's right or wrong. I only express what I've been taught. Do you see what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And how
I
I
do. Yeah.
douse.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to go. So for me and a lot of other dowsers, if you hold two rods, then hold them parallel to your body size. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would hold them like that. Now that's
Yeah.
called search mode. I've got two different types of rod here, but you can see what I mean. That's called search mode, pointing straight ahead, parallel to the ground. Now, if they cross for me like that, or they could
Yeah.
be repulsed rods like that, then that's found. That means I have found something. That's
Okay.
how my rods tell me what's going on beneath my feet, for example. So for me, it's not good or it's not bad. It's I have found something that I need to interpret. Okay.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
when you're dowsing for something, you only douse for one thing at any one time. So let's say I want to find a ley. Is my house associated with a ley line? Yeah, let's start there. I could say to my rod, the first thing that you should do with L rod dowsing. Can you see I've got my free hand here, and I'm holding
Yes.
one rod. I'm going to put this hand close to my solar plexus. It's out of camera. You'll just have to trust me. That's where my hand is. And I'm going to ask my rod, am I in balance to douse? And it's going, yes. That was actually quite slow. It's probably because I'm a little tired at this time. Okay. But I can douse. Now, if it'd gone the other way, away from my solar plexus and saying you're out of balance, well, what do? You can literally pop a little few drops of the backflower rescue remedy that I'm sure some of us have heard about underneath the tongue, hang around for a little while, and you will soon be back into balance. So I'm in
Wow.
balance. I can douse. You need to set up your yes or no responses with the dowsing rod. So I would say to my rod, or my two rods waiting for a cross, show me my yes response. Please show me my no response. Or they could cross as yes, or they could repulse if you're using two as yes. Now I can say to my rod, because I've set up my dowsing responses, and this is going to actually I'll show you anyway. I haven't got a ley in my house, but I'm going to say to my rod now, is there a ley line associated with my house? No, but I'm going to fake it now, and I'm going to pretend it's gone yes. Okay, just to give you an exercise, as it were. So yes, I've got a ley in my house. This is why you only use one rod for professional dowsing. So I'm going to pretend I'm facing this way. So I say to my rod, yes, there's a ley in my house. Well, show me the direction of the ley in my house. And it will point to a direction. And then you follow it slowly. And then when it goes to the edge of the line, bump, it will go to my found. Yeah. And that's how you can find one particular thing at one time. But if I was just to walk around my house, not thinking of what I'm dowsing for, oh, I've got a reaction. Oh, what's that? And then people go, oh, it's just energy. Oh, I've got a reaction over there. What is it? So you have to focus on that which you're going to douse. Do you see what I mean? And
I
that
do,
way
yeah.
you'll have a certain amount of professionalism about it. So for me, Mary, so I can't answer your question because I don't understand why that dowser would say that. But all I can say to you is that's how I douse, and it would be my found. So sorry, I can't answer that.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a great answer, Maria. And can you ask your rods anything?
Yes, but there are kind of psychic rules one must follow. So let's say, for example, I'm sat here in my house and I want to psychically spy on somebody. You know, let's say I mean, I did this when I was young and I got completely told off by my father, but give someone a dowsing rod when they're about 18, they're going to be asking about what their boyfriends are up to and all sorts. And going off into tangents one probably shouldn't go off on. And that's called psychic spying. Do you see what I mean? I'm spying on somebody. I'm trying to find information out about you or something. That's a no-no. That's called grey magic. But if we are humble of heart and if we want to find out something for the betterment of somebody, then yes, we can. And you can always ask your dowsing rod, can I ask a question about X? Whatever your X is, yeah? And if it goes no, which were for me, if you remember, was that way, well, then you don't ask. But if it goes that way, it is. Sig Longren back in the 1980s was a one years. Oh God, talking like he's not here. Oh my God. Here he would go mad. Sig is a really wonderful dowser. And back in the 80s, alongside, you know, people like my late father, he came out with something really amazing with dowsing called spiritual dowsing. And that's where you ask your rod, can I ask this question? Should I ask this question? May I ask this question? And if you get yes, 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 then you have permission to douse.
This is fascinating. Absolutely wonderful. So, does anyone have any other questions before anybody? I want to give you plenty of opportunity. I don't want to run ahead in case you do. Anybody else? And just unmute yourself if you need to. Okay, well, if you can think, if you want to speak, do that, and or put up your hand or whatever. But I do want to ask you, and I don't want to. I know that you're tired, Maria, and it's getting late. But I do want to ask you, your website has, so we can get the dowsing rods from your website. Is that's true? Also,
Yeah.
your books. You have a number of wonderful books that you've written, including some that your father has written. But you mentioned you had a recent book. Do you want to tell us what that is again, please?
Yes, I mean, on the aveburyexperience.co.uk and esotericcollege.com, there my website, esotericcollege.com, has my courses on, and the Avebury Experience has some practical workshops and that type of thing on. It's called The Secret History of Stonehenge, because I look into earth energies at various sites, not just Stonehenge, and to the different types of long lost civilizations. And I explore the whole monument, because what we're spoon-fed Stonehenge look like isn't the case. Because if we go back to the very first accounts of Stonehenge, well, they say there was different stones there. There were lost stones that were stolen by the royal family back in the 17th to 16th centuries, for example. So some of Stonehenge is being carted away to St. James's Palace in London. And it's interesting to note, and this is, you know, the God gospel truth, that I have been writing for English Heritage and selling products at their very famous Stonehenge tourist information like shop. And I've had a poster there that I've been commissioned to do, a book called Ancient Sites of Stonehenge, and helped to contribute to other of their guidebooks as well. And I mentioned The Secret History of Stonehenge. And as soon as I did that, everything I have ever done for the past decade has been banned, and including my book. So I know I'm getting close to the truth. that they don't want to know. But I always say to people for inspiration, you always follow your heart. And wherever your heart leads, your spirit will follow, and things will start to happen, whether it's, you know, in your own home, in your own environs. Relate to the earth, and things really do start to move.
Oh, Maria, thank you so much for everything you brought here. And I do actually want anybody here to go and look up listening to the recording afterwards, go and look up Maria's website, because there's a wealth of wonderful information there, courses that you can do, the books that are available, Maria's written and her dad has written. And also, I mean, the idea of the Avebury experience itself is lovely. You can check that out and book that. How often do you do the Avebury experience, Maria? Or any of the experiences?
Yeah, this year I'm doing Glastonbury, Avebury, and various different practical one-to-one workshops. I also do what's called Egyptian pendulum dowsing, where you can use a very ancient, literally Egyptian pendulum for healing and light work, and I teach that on Zoom groups and or one-to-ones or small groups of people. Sometimes people just get their friends together and want a kind of intimate group. I do that as well, or I do obviously, you know, organized groups on Zoom in various forms of dowsing, as well as things like tarot card reading and past life readings. I do those as well on the Avebury experience. So there's a little bit of a variety. But when it comes to rods, I mean, obviously I sell rods. I sell the copper rod I showed you, but really it's how you feel comfortable with a rod. If it feels comfortable, if it feels right, if it just kind of, you know, makes your hand tingle when you first touch it, then I would say go with that one, you know. But I do like copper. Why do I like copper? It's a metal of the goddess Venus. That used to be mined in Cyprus, which is literally means copper, Cyprus. It was a huge copper mine back in the Chalcolithic Copper Age. And so it's a very feminine metal. That's why I use copper.
Great. Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you for all of that. There's lots of lovely thank yous, Maria. Gail, absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. Katie, thank you so much for tonight's show. It's also so fascinating getting educated more and more on this type of work. Looking forward to looking for more of your work online. And so, Shauna, thank you, Maria. Fascinating to hear your information. You've given us so much to think about, and you've probably opened a few doors that may allow us follow that, for, you know, the curiosity of that. And who knows what kind of adventures we have waiting for us. Thank you, Maria, so much. I'm really going to look forward to seeing lots more from you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody else, for being here this evening too. Thank you. And see you
All
again.
right then. Cheerio.
Take care. Take care. Bye.
Cheerio. Lots of love, everyone. Lots of love.